obviously saying we were here amongst this incredible collection in this special place. This is a long, long way forward from the Skoda Octavia, and it's been a relatively short period of time. We have some absolute beauties. We've got the Delta S4 here. We've got this incredibly special Quattro, which has got a great story. And then we've got the 205 there, and surrounded by just amazing cars. Has it got out of hand, Steve?
Gee. I'm sure our audience would say no.
Absolutely
I'm
not.
sure my wife might say, really? Another car? It's never out of hand if it's somewhat in control. It plays a part in my life. It gives a certain level of, fulfillment. But it also is something that you want to share. So as long as you share it, I think, it's not out of control.
This is what I love. Really in any form of collectibles, particularly high-end collectibles, there's an awful lot that just disappears, gets bought, disappears, never to be seen again for someone's private garage, someone's private whatever it might be. But you're buying these cars and collecting these cars and maintaining them to the highest standard, obviously for a bit of your enjoyment, but also for they're here for others to enjoy. They're driven and they're enjoyed.
We moved into these new premises earlier this year. And one of my fundamental tenets for getting this place was accessibility. Prior to having this premises, the challenge was logistics of getting cars in and out. I had cars up on lifts. They were squeezed into places. You couldn't enjoy them visually because they were hidden away because of lack of space. But accessing a car to take it out and drive was like, do I really want to go and move 6 cars to be able to drive that? So fundamentally, this new location allows us that accessibility, and therefore I can drive it more. In terms of sharing it with people, I try not to impose on people, but if people want to come and see it, it's here. And Sean, who looks after the collection and who is that expertise, that focus, who looks after the detail. He's here every day, and we facilitate people coming here who want to come here.
Do you know what you were saying about the cars? Sorry to interrupt you, Steve.
That's all right.
It's just about being able to show them off properly. We've obviously moved a couple of your cars. I hope you're
I hear you gave Sean a little bit of a challenge yesterday moving cars around.
He can park my car any day. I tell you what, he was very clever. But by moving some cars, it then gave you a different view of other cars.
Yeah.
So one of your cars, which is one of the quirkiest cars here, one of my favourites, the Citroen.
Yeah.
The Citroen BX homologation special. And having moved the cars that were in front of it, you saw it in profile, sideways on this morning, and it was like, that is even quirkier than I thought it was when you see the whole thing. But, that's the great thing about having the cars here. You get the chance to see them, and you see a different thing, when almost in different lights and when they're parked in different places.
With the Citroen, I'm not fortunate enough to have the works car yet. And I was trying to buy one last month, but that escaped me, and there are very few of them. But what I love is putting the works car next to the road car and seeing the evolution of them. So something like the Citroen, quirky, but iconic in a different way. It's a crazy car.
It's a crazy car.
You think of everybody in Group B realizing, four-wheel drive, that needs to be. Front engine doesn't really work. Mid-engine's probably, getting there. This one obviously being front, but at least the weight balance on these cars was thought about. I mean, the Citroen, the engine's over the front of the front axle.
So, Sean opened the bonnet for us this morning, and the engine is in front of the front wheels. And it's incredible.
So I'm not sure quite. We think
what they were thinking. A pasties or too many, perhaps.
We think of the Group B era as being one which brought Formula One type engineering to the rally space. You know, I mean, technological development in the Formula and the Group B era was huge, and steps which we still see the benefit of today. And then you get the Citroen. I was like, it was the last car on the scene as well. It wasn't like they didn't have time to understand what everybody else had developed.
Yeah, they've seen everything, and you can see if you look at the kind of, you know, the back two-thirds of the car, there's influences of Audi there. The
Definitely.
Quattro. But so clearly they did look at the other cars, but just got it badly wrong. But you know, if we look around at these cars, you know, and there are obviously this Audi is just a very special car. But is it possible, Steve, to have a favourite? Are you allowed to have a favourite? Is it like saying, tell me your favourite child? Is it one of those situations, or can you have a favourite?
If you had my cell phone today and a certain person called, on my screen it would light up, Josie, my favourite child. So that is because my daughter, probably at the age of 8 or 9, stole my phone and, you know, and put that in there. So sometimes you have favourites because somebody else says that should be your favourite, is my kind of... If I have to put something down, it really is different eras, right? So the Mark II Escort has a fundamental passion for me, place in my life. I love them. You know, the Mark II Eaton Yale car in the corner is a replica, so it's not the real car. But that has a great affinity with me. I love that. If you go to the Group B era, I've got to say the Audi, the RS200, and the 205 are really up there.
Fabulous.
Up there. I mean, you've seen the Delta S4.
It's an object of beauty, of absolute beauty.
Only the Italians could finish a Group B car on the inside, you know, with suede upholstery, padded doors.
Could I say it's like a boudoir almost inside? Yeah. I mean, it's incredible, isn't it?
And as we were talking about it yesterday, what is that armrest really in the middle? There's so many aspects of these cars. The Audi is, this one's used, very well used. It's, you know, we talk about collecting and we think about low mile cars, right? You know, you go to the auctions and a 1980s Ferrari, which has got 2,000 miles on it since new, and, you know, that's the one everybody wants. I mean, you can talk about what collecting should be and is. I mean, this car, the Audi's well over 120,000 miles on it. And, you know, I think there are only 5 in green that were produced. Car was originally delivered to Tom Hammond, you know, the rallycross guy, and I think is, you know, if you look on the internet and put in green Audi Sport Quattro, this one often pops up. You know, Tom Hammond ordered it from the factory, went to collect it. He'd been desperate for a works car to compete in, couldn't get one. Saw one in the delivery center at Audi, and delivery center manager said, "You can't have that one, it's a prototype. I want it." Took him 2 days.
Wow.
He ended up not only driving this one home from Germany, but he went and bought a trailer, a tow hitch, and he went home with that works car. And this car served as his tow car for his rallycross car throughout his Audi Quattro competition history. So it's been driven, it's been used, it's what it should be.
You know, as a collector, is that part of the appeal? It's, you know, okay, it's, I suppose, you know, finding pristine cars with low mileage is important, but finding cars with a story, finding cars with a heritage and a provenance, you know, is that almost equally as important? You know, if you had to have a car, if you had to choose between a car with a great story or a car with low mileage and in pristine condition, is there a
balance?
You know,
is
a
there
balance?
a one? Well, I think road cars, if you're truly treating something as an investment, you know, low mileage seems to be the first tick in the box. But to me, the history of this road car is more valuable than the fact, I think it's got 135,000 miles on it. So to me, that history is more important. Of course, when you come to competition cars, history is very, very important. You know, we were talking yesterday about something that I'm looking at to maybe add to the collection on the rally car side. Excuse me. And I think, as we talked about, which rallies it entered, where did it finish, and who drove it. That's the most important thing, obviously, from a competition car perspective. Right. It's also a challenge, from a proving what the car is.
An increasing challenge as the values of these cars go through the roof, and they have done over the past few years. There are unfortunately people who are not as honest as you are, and who see opportunities, who see opportunities to create almost fakes in the market. And I think recently in Australia, there's one of those cars. We'll not mention which car it was, but there was one that was sold with very dubious credentials. It's a sad situation, isn't it? But it's so difficult to prove the provenance. You'd have thought it would be straightforward, chassis and all the rest, but with rally cars, it's difficult.
It is. I think competition cars generally, like if you're looking at Formula One cars, for instance, but at least you can try and get some certification from the team from them. But rallying has this: we'll do what we need to do to get to the finish, right?
Yeah.
We'll rebuild the car during during the rally. There's reputations out there from what happened in the day to certain cars, and how many chassis numbers, how many chassis plates are there out there really, and how many license plates, and what license plate went with what chassis plate. It's always been a challenge. Now people have turned it into an opportunity, which is the sad piece.
It is, isn't it?
So we've always had to do diligence. Again, the important thing there is to have the relationships with the right people who can verify things. So Ian Gwyn's been my central source for advising on acquisitions. I've got some people that I really trust 110% when I'm looking at cars. Max Girardo is somebody I've done a lot of business with and trust him and his colleagues, and I think is a great resource. There are people I wouldn't go to, but I would certainly contend that detailed due diligence can't be underestimated. And again, relationships. If I ask Ian, his relationship with the right people in the right teams is what gets you the information you get comfortable with. I mean, we've had challenges.
Right. Have you ever been caught out?
I don't believe we have. We had a long-running discussion, should I put it, with somebody who had the license plate on their Talbot Lotus Sunbeam representing that it was the Toivonen RAC car, when we actually have the RAC car.
Yeah.
And it took a long time,
right,
but we prove our case. Paul White, Henry's co-driver on that RAC, came and validated the car, and we had photos and we had a huge amount of history on the car. But as people have got more, they've got more innovative in what documentation they're producing. I won't say fraudulent, but let's say innovative. And as technology has gone along, and as we've lost some of the key people around us from the eras, going back to Group B, and before, as we were talking, again, we've lost some of these people who could validate things. We've consciously taken advantage of the people who were around in the era and trying to get them to document our cars.
That's really important,
because
isn't it? Yeah.
Otherwise, I mean, John Wheeler obviously is somebody who is Mr. RS200. You get John and you get him to come and look at cars, and I'm fortunate enough to have the Stig Blomqvist RS200 works car back over in Ian's workshop in Brackley, and John came over and audited that for us. So we've got to be very proactive, I think, about how we are able to pass on to the next generation the information and the knowledge that they've got the genuine article, and it's not easy.
No, it's not. It's an absolute minefield, I would imagine, and it's something that, as you say, the team that you've built around you now are world leading in that regard. You know, some of the very best people in the world.
I'd like to think so. You know, I mean, I say I rely on other people, and they've delivered, and I've every confidence in them.
Do you know what we're going to do? We're going to do a little series of pieces on the very special cars that you own. But I want to talk about one car. Because it is, you know, when people talk about Group B, particularly people who are maybe not so familiar with the sport, it's the Quattro. It's the Quattro that comes to mind. It's the Quattro that really was the sexiest of cars. It was such an incredible looking car, and we were very lucky to do our Monte Carlo coverage from Ian Gwynn's place, and sat in the background was this presence, and it was one of your latest acquisitions, and it was the Mikkola Quattro. That is one heck of a special car.
Yeah.
How long had you wanted that car for?
It was a car that required the repositioning of some other cars out of the collection to be able to afford, for a start. So sometimes when you see something, you know you've got to do whatever you need to get it. And again, I'd known of the car for a long time. I mean, the car had been in Juha Kankkonen's collection for many years. Between Juha and Stig have driven it a few times in exhibitions, and Hannu had driven it because it used to be Hannu's car. Yeah. The car is a works car. It only really competed in anger a couple of times, and then became really a test car for them. It's probably one of the most, if not the most, original car out there, because it hasn't done that much. It didn't end up in a privateer's hand and get modified and, or rally crossed and rebodied or whatever a lot of them, or some of them did. So it's been something on my bucket list for a long time, but it doesn't have that history of winning a WRC round. It won the event prior to the 1,000 Lakes, which
I can't remember the name of the rally.
I should know.
There is some footage on YouTube of it winning that event. I've watched some of it. It's incredible.
Yeah, and having had the privilege of meeting Hannu a couple of times, having him drive the replica Eaton Yale car, and just one sidebar very quickly. First time I ever met him, it was him and Björn Waldegård at Goodwood.
Right.
And I had the car there, and Ian Gwynn knew them, and he said, "Do you want to drive it?" And so Björn took it round Goodwood, the stage, and then Hannu took it round. And one of the most intriguing conversations was listening to them after they got out, arguing whether the diff was different or the cam was not right. They both had a different opinion of why the car wasn't what it was. Anyhow, but the fact that Hannu, who was iconic, obviously you've got others like Walter Roll and other people with and Stig with the Quattro, but having a Hannu ownership in that chain, having a Juha Kankkonen ownership in that chain, having the works background to it, it was something I really wanted. Juha had looked at selling his collection at various points, and he sold a few cars out of his collection one by one. I knew I couldn't afford to buy the collection because it's such a fabulous collection. But relationship, Max Girardo actually put together the deal. And he came to me and said, "Look," he said, "I think we can get this car. It's going to take this," to which there was a sharp intake of breath. But if we need to do it, we need to do it quickly. I've seen it. I haven't ridden in it yet.
Wow.
It's something, COVID has a lot of things that have restricted us, and that's one of the things I haven't experienced it yet.
Well, I have to say, Rally Day this year, it was the absolute star of Rally Day. The interest was incredible. And Ian drove it. Ian's a great driver, and it looked great, sounded great. And then I think David Higgins drove it, looked great.
It would be Mark.
Mark Higgins, not David. It was Mark. Quite
There's
right.
there's no animosity between the two, but
you're same person in a lot of people's minds. But you're quite right.
You're dead. You know, just mention James Bond's stuntman, and you know that's the differentiating factor.
Yes. And he was just off to a premiere of James Bond afterwards.
Had his tux on, did he?
Well, not quite. But so those two drove it, and then Craig Breen drove it. I would not have believed that such a car that looked so big and bulky could be so nimble. It was just a delight because you get that incredible sense when it fires up and when it takes off, and the sound is incredible. That's enough. But then to see this beast being thrown through these chicanes, and with some respect, obviously, because it was
just a little,
car,
not too much.
But it was incredible. It was, for me, it was like, I just didn't think those Group B cars could do that. It was just wonderful to see, and it really is part of what's great about your collection, is that I guess that's part of why you own these cars, because you want people to be able to see them and appreciate them. People like myself who never saw them. You know, I never saw a Group B car in the forests. They used to service them on the roundabout not far from my house in Trentham. But I never saw them in the forest. And to see that Group B car just on that stage at Castle Combe Circuit, highlight of the year for me.
I don't know why, but, well, I do know why. I couldn't. The schedule usually meant that Kielder was in the middle of the night. And the number of times I stood on corners in Kielder to just wait for the sound of the Audi Quattro coming and see the lights, and of course then they're gone. It's the middle of the night. So I saw the most I saw of a Quattro or a lot of the cars was in Parc Fermé or service.
Servicing on roads.
So Craig Breen, though, come on. So I've known of Craig Breen for many years, and we all know who he is, what he is, and that fateful rally day, which followed on from Walters Arena, which the start of the DirtFish media evolution, was Ian Gwynn introduced me to Craig, who was there. And he said, you know, Craig's really interested in driving the Group A Subaru. I said, oh, yeah. He said, well, do you want to go in with him? And I said, well, why wouldn't I, for a start? And it's like, it's awesome just to meet Craig. Yeah. So I'll never forget, I was fortunate enough to go out with Ian in, I think it was the RS200. And we came back in, and there's this staging area, and one of Ian's crew was running. He said, come on, quick now, get out. Craig's at the front of the queue for going in the Group A. I go, okay, so I'm running down the lane there. And they strapped me in. I didn't even get a chance to shake his hand. I was just like, over the intercom, hi, Craig. Hi, how you doing? And, he'd never been in the car before, right? And rally day that year, from the start line, had a square right, square left, square right, and there's concrete blocks down there. Craig had never been in it before. So I thought, I'll take it easy. We got off that line, I'm back in my seat, and I'm going, no, that's solid, that wall. That's solid, Craig, that's solid. I'm not saying this, but threw it round. Amazing. My point really is, we got the Group B era cars, and the drivers who drove them were awesome. But today's drivers are jumping in the Group B cars and making the Audi look so nimble. Is no disrespect to the Waldegårds, the Mikkolas, the Rolls, but today's drivers are just even extracting different things out of these cars.
That's an interesting.
And Craig in the Group A, actually after the Group A, after we got out of the Group A Subaru, he said, oh, I really love to do this. He said, Rally Legend is 3 weeks away. Any chance I can use the car? Like,
he's never been
shy. And in fairness to him, we put together a deal that day, and Ian Gwynn looked at me and said, really? You promised him Rally Legend in Italy in 3 weeks? I've got to do this, and this with all these. I said, yeah, but you can do it. So they took the car down there, and Craig had a blast with it. But putting Craig in any of, it's like putting Mark Higgins, David Higgins, Ian obviously, or Craig Breen in one of these cars. Why wouldn't you? Because people get to experience something from a viewer perspective. That
see,
they don't want to see me driving an S1, an Audi S1, because I'll be 20 miles an hour at the most, and I might be doing a 3-point turn around some of those 90 degrees. But seeing these drivers in it, it's just an experience hard to repeat.
Taken a lot of your time already today, Steve. But if we start to wrap things up, what's the future? What is the future? What is the future for the collection, for the rally school, for the media? Is there an ambition that you're still working towards in rallying?
If I start with collection, we are still transitioning some cars over here from the UK. I'd like to keep as many cars as I can together in sort of the thematic of road car with rally car. But the intent is always to leave some cars over in Brackley with Ian, because that provides the opportunity set to actually go and use them, in places like Goodwood, and get them out there with the audience and get them driven. There is a little bit of a move towards, again, the repositioning of some things. Group B is definitely still up there, and if you look at the missing pieces, a Delta S4 works car is definitely something out there. A real true T16 works car. We've got this sort of Evolution 1 car here, which is not a true works car. It's got all the Evolution 1 original parts on it, but it's not a works car. So those are a couple of pieces, as well as the Citroen, if we could find one to add. Those sort of really move some of the collection forward. And again, we'll have to reposition some things out of there. I mean, so we're actively looking at a couple of things there. And most recently, we also added the Peugeot, the 206 WRC car, which was the Richard Burns, Marcus Gronholm car. And if we could get the 205, the 206, then what's next? So there may be something there that starts making sense. Some of the road car stuff, as you know, there's this other side of my brain which has like the Porsche road cars in there. There's 1 or 2 cars there that I've got my eye on. It's got to be managed in terms of the economic impact of that. So repositioning is probably the best way of saying on the collection side. DirtFish Rally School, there's a huge future for DirtFish. I'm 110% committed to it. Right. We've managed to balance ourselves and keep ourselves established. We need to think before we go again for another step. Whether that's a different location, whether that's an incremental location, so we then got a second location, I'm not sure. Right. I'd like to see it grow. We've got to think very carefully about what we deliver to our partners. You're from a marketing background. You know exactly what somebody wants in terms of value. And we've got to think very carefully about the electric era. You think of the OEMs and what they want delivered to them out of, supporting somebody like DirtFish. Right. So we've got some really interesting, I think, different opportunities coming. Mm-hmm. But very positive about that whole thing, and we'll find our way through it, and we've got a great team to get us there. DirtFish Media, I mean, the world's your oyster, right?
It seems that way.
As I said before, I mean, I see a really interesting time in reporting on the sport over the next couple of years. I think we're going to get some indigestion. I think we're going to have a lot of our viewership who are going to have very extreme opinions at different ends of the spectrum about what we should be doing as a sport, what the manufacturers should be doing, or who's going to support the sport. There's going to be a lot of evolution. So I think there's some really interesting times and a new audience potentially, but certainly if you think that media's got to drive sponsorship and funding for the sport, media could be a really key component and a very valuable component of every participant within the motorsport.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Yeah.
And I don't know if I answered all the key elements to you.
Yeah, very well.
But you know.
What about an ambition? An ambition for yourself personally in terms of rallying? That's maybe the only one. Is there anything that's still there, that's burning? Maybe not.
I'm hesitant only because I don't want to spread myself too thin. And secondly, I'm just not clear myself as to what value I personally can bring to the bigger picture. If there is a value that somebody sees somewhere that I could bring, I'd be more than delighted to step up. I mean, if I think of my core business in aviation, my family will tell you that they're tired of hearing, oh, in 3 to 4 years' time, I'm going to step back. In 3 to 4 years' time, I'm not going to be doing as much. I'm lucky. I love what I'm doing. You know, aviation, cars and family, as somebody pointed out, that's alphabetically ordered and not order of importance. So that, to me, those are core things I'm always going to be interested in and intrigued in. And whilst I enjoy more a little bit of relaxation time, I'd be bored after a couple of days if I'm not doing something. I think the truth is, the 3 to 5 year time horizon will see my main business, aviation, commitments step back. And during that course of time, I think I will have time to do some different things. And I say, if I could deliver value, if somebody thinks that it's worthwhile involving me in something in rallying motorsport, I'd be totally open to it. Right. You know, over here in the US, sometimes, even though technology brings us close to everything, I do feel a little bit disconnected with some of the things. So again, I'm just conscious of that. But you're not going to change the things. You're not going to change family, cars, and aviation. It's always going to be core tenets that I'm involved in.
We will watch this space very much with interest. Steve, I have to say it's been a fascinating time. Thank you very much for giving your time to sit down with me this morning. I'm sure our viewers and our listeners will have learned an awful lot more about many things through this discussion. Thank you for having us in this wonderful location. And Steve Rimmer, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much for your time, and I hope this is enjoyable for people.
Sure it will be. Thank you.
Thanks, Colin.